Ignore the sound and think of a time, a long, long time ago, when the world was much, much younger than it is today. There lived a dog that loved to swim. She was a big bear of a dog, huge, with black fur that flopped into her eyes. She had huge paws that were webbed like a duck's that were meant for swimming. And she loved to swim. Every day she would walk from her home through a tiny little village to a water bank, and she would actually swim upstream. The stronger she got, the further she got. The further she went, the stronger she got. And when she found a bank that she enjoyed, looked interesting, she would go ashore, do a little hunting, do a little foraging, and then take some sort of token of her activities, her adventure, and float happily back home again. She'd bring home a stick or a bone or whatever fancied her. Now the village she walked through, a small little village, had overhunted their area. They were getting short on food. There weren't enough nuts, there weren't enough berries. They were land dwellers. They didn't know how to swim and they didn't fish. They did not live off the water. The chief gathered his people together and said, "We must find a solution to our problem. We do not have any food suggestions." One person said, "How about we follow the dog?" Another person said, "We can't swim. Why do you think we are in this situation?" Then yet another person said, "I've got an idea." This person's name was Adam, because it was the first really good idea. "Let's make friends with the dog." "Everyone," the chief said, "let's do this, and then we'll think of other solutions to our problem." All right. The next day, Adam waited for the dog to come back from its little swim. And he waded out a little bit further into the water and started making friends with the dog. This dog was very friendly and enjoyed the affection and started seeking out Adam. He didn't even have to wade into the water. The dog would come running to him. And as soon as Adam made friends with him, he would drop his little bones, his little treats that he found, his meaty bone that he found at his beach. One day, Adam was waiting for the dog, and the dog was swimming towards him with a rope in its mouth, but something kind of large was trailing behind the dog, and Adam wondered what could possibly be that. So he waded in, got a little closer, and the dog, of course, approached him and continued on ashore, and he saw a gigantic piece of wood being towed by the rope. And he went to grab it to get a better look, and just then, the current pushed his legs up from under him, and he was floating on this wood. This wood was a piece of balsa wood, which is typically used in making boats. Light bulb went off. I can use this to follow the dog to where she goes. So the next morning, he waited for the dog. When she arrived from her home to the village, petted her, made friends with her, and tied the rope around her neck. As she took off upstream, he was hanging on like you would a rubber tire, and was being towed upstream to the bank where the dog was playing. He saw how fruitful it was. He hunted a little bit, had a little bag, he stuffed some of the stuff that he had captured in his pocket. He found nuts, he found berries, he put that all in his little pocket, and then at the end of his excursion, he and the dog floated back to the village. When Ted and Ed, a couple of the villagers, saw what he had, they said, "Hey, this is great. Can we have some?" Now the villager got a little selfish. It was his valuable time, his big effort that had gotten the food, and he wanted to reap the benefits. "No, Ted, no, Ed, I'm not sharing this with you, but you can come with me tomorrow." So the next morning, Ted, Ed, and Adam all climbed aboard the piece of wood, and the dog towed them upstream to the bank. A little bit slower, a little bit more weight, but she's big, this bear, strong dog. And she got to the beach, pulled them all there successfully, They all hunted, they all found berries, they all found goodies and put them in their little pouches and then floated happily back to the village. The villagers, more villagers, saw the success, and yet now these 3 villagers became very selfish, very greedy. No, I'm not sharing, they said. But you can come and get your own. The next day, just about all the village went. It was practically a flotilla of people behind this poor dog. And she was trying to go upstream, and she's swimming, and these people are hanging on. Come on, dog, go, go, go. And she's swimming, and she's pulling against the stream, and she's not getting anywhere. And her big muscles were just wearing out, and she started to sink. And just then, the villagers all let go. And as they did, she came back up. She buoyed up again. Several of the villagers grabbed onto the wood, and this loving, smart dog swam quickly to shore, taking them to safety. Several of the other villagers realized that when they had let go, they weren't sinking. They actually were floating. And they decided if they were to imitate how the dog paddled, they could actually direct themselves back to shore. So there were several people who were rescued by this dog in their own ingenuity, yet a few were being hoisted downstream by the current. The dog quickly went chasing after them. The villagers on shore were so concerned about their buddies in the water that they were running with the current, running along the shore beyond the edges of their village that they had never explored, through more forested area, to another bank, an open bank that was basically directly in front of this giant dead tree with big roots coming out of it. And the remaining villagers had grabbed onto this tree, hanging on because they couldn't swim. And the dog was swimming as fast as it could to the tree, swam around the tree, and the villagers grabbed onto the dog's wood that was she still had the rope around her neck, she still had the wood behind her, and the dog started swimming back to that bank where the villagers were standing and waiting. And she was going, but she was so tired from all her efforts that she was starting to lose her strength again. And just as she was ready to sink, a giant hand grabbed her and pulled her up. The villagers on shore had made a gigantic chain of people. Adam had anchored himself with a piece of rope. The rest of the villagers had gone hand by hand across the water. The ones who could swim were fearless, and they were at the edge of the line, helping pull their buddies and the dog ashore. When they came ashore, they looked around and they thought, wow, this is a nice, abundant place. We could possibly live here. And in honor of their newfound values, that if you work together, you find success. In honor of their new friendship, the dog, and the honor of their newfound land, they named the place Newfoundland. And thus lived happily ever after, the Newfoundland dog.